can sort of move along smoothly. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Graham Pervier, our final speaker, for some closing remarks. And once he's done, it's kind of like the acolyte coming into church and taking the light out. We are done. We're not going to sing a hymn or anything after that, but after Graham tours, we are done. There is a tour of some places in the Piedmont Triad. If you're interested in taking that tour this afternoon, huddle up back there at the table. Thank you, Graham.
I hope that regardless of what you think of my comments, that you will tell people who left early that they were really great, so they'll stay for the whole meeting next time. Like many of you, I'm a little schizophrenic right now. I spent 26 years in Forsyth County, 19 of those as county manager, and during the last 7 of those years, I lived in a townhouse cluster. Now I'm the president of the Economic Development Organization in Rockingham County, and I live in the middle of 55 acres of rural property. And if I put my chair on the front porch just right, I own every damn thing I can see, and I really like that too. So, you know, when I got my master's degree in urban design, we all thought that everyone surely would like to live in either Reston, Virginia, or Columbia, Maryland, or one of the British new towns. I'm not sure that that's true, but we may want to talk about steering development very gently a little differently. You know, this is starts out as easy. It's easy to agree that we want to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And we're talking about environmental quality and economic prosperity and social equity. We're starting out with some livability principles and some goals for this project that are useful and hard to argue with. We're talking about a planning process that's actually pretty plain vanilla. You know, we're going to analyze existing conditions, validate the issues, develop a vision statement and goals, test some alternative future scenarios, come up with a plan, and then come up with implementation strategies. I think we probably ought to start out though with just a little dose of humility. I'm fond of quoting Jane Jacobs from her great book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, when she said, "A region is an area safely larger than the last one to whose problems we could find no solutions." So I think we need to be a little humble. I think we recognize that in our livability principles, because we've said we want to support our existing communities and value our neighborhoods. And so I think that's important. I also think we ought to have some respect for existing plans. When I first came to North Carolina in 1969 with the Community Planning Division, my boss, George Monahan, always told us when we were starting on a master plan for a community to take a look at the last plan, any other plans that the community had done in the last 10 years or so that might be relevant, and incorporate those into the new plan and explain why things were the same or why we had changed those. And I think we owe that same respect to the plans that have been done in our community. You know, we're talking about a plan here that's going to cover land use, community development, housing, transportation, economic and workforce development, infrastructure, green infrastructure, healthy communities, climate, and energy. That's ambitious, but all of you know that there have been lots of work done in our cities and counties, and even in this region around these issues. And I think we need to pick up on those. We need to look at those, and then we can see whether there are commonalities or gaps or things that need to be changed. When I think of changing a plan, I'm reminded of, in Forsyth County for many years, we thought that the southeastern quadrant of the county should remain pretty much semi-rural, as it was then. And we used our farmland program pretty aggressively to protect some tracts down there. Then we were out looking for, develop a big industrial site. The late Jerry Long, former CEO of Reynolds, was a 2-term county commissioner. Jerry was a Yankee with a ferocious vocabulary. So when we were looking to assemble the land for the Union Cross Business Park, Jerry said, "What stupid son of a bitch put farmland preservation right in the middle of the best economic site in the whole county?" Well, you know, I kind of looked around because I had some involvement, but you know, the planning director was Paul's predecessor. One of Paul's predecessors, planning director, wasn't there, so I blamed him. But plans do have to change from time to time. I think we need to be a little bit careful about jargon. A lot of you know, I think, that there are folks out there that think this is probably some scheme by HUD to get us all to implement the United Nations Agenda 21 and herd everybody into large cities to live in small apartments and ride the monorail and ride our bikes to the grocery store. You know, for some of those folks, terms like smart growth and new urbanism and traditional neighborhood design are anathema. Now, there are some nut jobs that we're just not going to be able to convince, but you need to be careful not to give them ammunition to poison the well with other people that we hope we will be able to persuade. So let's be careful about the jargon. I think there's an awful lot of it in our process. The other thing I think we need to do is to take the time to profoundly understand how we got to be where we are. Some of our early stuff on this project talks about reversing the region's highly ranked sprawl status, and a lot of you have seen sprawl in North Carolina. But the fact is that some statistics that roll up in North Carolina and look like sprawl are not really reflected in what happens on the map with the actual spatial distribution of people and activity. And they didn't arise in the same way that sprawl arose in other big cities, spiraling outward from the central core. North Carolina was always a state of small freeholders. You know, we were jealous of the aristocratic planters in Tidewater, Virginia, and the low country of South Carolina, and that's why we call ourselves a veil of humility between two mountains of conceit. But we were a state of small freeholders and of small towns and small cities. In fact, when the industrialists came down from the north looking for cheap labor and also looking for water power that was needed for some of their production, couldn't always find the people they needed. They found that these rural North Carolinians liked their little farmsteads and weren't real anxious to go. And so what they did was they built affordable housing in walkable communities where you could walk to the factory, and if necessary, they added stores and churches or even a movie theater. That sounds like what we're talking about, but we call them mill villages and are horrified at the idea of a mill village. So isn't it interesting? I found myself thinking that in Rockingham County, a farmer who wants to keep farming and sells off a little corner of his property and creates a multi-use cluster development. That is like a mobile home park with a convenience store. So think about the language we're using. Nonetheless, I think there's a lot of energy here, as has been pointed out. I like where we are. I have a 3x5 card on my dresser that I look at when I'm getting together my watch and all the stuff that I carry, and it says, start every day with energy and enthusiasm and hope. Now, sometimes you can't do that, but you do the best you can. I think that's where we are with this project. I think we're starting with energy and enthusiasm and hope, and let's stick with it. Thank you.